preschool. I really liked working with younger children.
So that obviously went to this.
Yes.
Did that make you really want to be an educator and help people that...
Absolutely, yeah. So I, like I said, when I was growing up, I used to help my parents teach Sunday school and work with the younger kids. I did vacation Bible school, and so I, babysat, and I had done a lot of different things with kids. But I really love the whole child development piece. It's not just the educational piece; it's the mentoring and the role modeling thing that is so important. And that's what I like about School on Wheels, is that we provide more than the backpack and school supplies, is that we provide a caring adult in the students' lives to help them get back on track with their education. Many of our students are missing layers of learning because of multiple moves. Each time a student moves, it can take them 3 to 6 months to recover academically. Most of our students are going to move 2 to 3 times in 1 year. One of our students moved 6 times in 1 year and went to 3 different schools, and she was in the 5th grade. By the time she got to her 3rd school, she had 9 makeup packets of work to do, and she brought them in to meet with her tutor, and there's no way to get those 9 makeup packets done when you already have homework for a 5th grader. So we set up 2 extra days of tutoring so that she could catch up with those 9 makeup packets of work and help her get back on track in that classroom, and then also to stay on top of her 5th grade work. And she was able to then to graduate and go on to 6th grade. And when her and her mother moved out of the shelter into an apartment down the street from the shelter, she came to us and said that she wanted to do a fundraiser for School on Wheels at her local library that was 3 blocks away. And she set up a school supply drive for us that summer. And she also recruited volunteers for us to help us stuff our backpacks at our headquarters. So what I was in awe of is, here's a student who moved 6 times in 1 year, 3 different schools, who had the resiliency to keep pushing ahead, although the work seemed overwhelming to her. And she's the one that asked for extra help. And then she came back and said, what can I do for you? And that's what it's all about. It's a full circle. It's really about us helping people when they're in need and in trouble, and then they're coming back to help others that are in need. And that's what I think is the most exciting. And Taylor and her family have certainly done that.
It's definitely something that the feeling that you won't get anywhere else, especially when it comes to something like this. Not a lot of people, like teachers, don't understand sometimes. So Cheryl and this organization definitely helps keep your grades up and keeps you focused. It's a good structure.
And then she helped other kids do that as well.
Wow.
So it was interesting because Taylor came to our tutor training. All of our volunteers come from within the community, and we work with volunteers that are bankers and accountants and students, and we work with local colleges, area colleges, Stonehill College and Bridgewater State are 2 of our main college partners. But when we went around the table, everybody introduces themselves, and then they say, why are you here? And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't tell Taylor. I'm thinking, what is she going to say? And then what did you say when you said, why are you here? And what is your experience with homelessness?
And I said that I was homeless just like a year ago, and now I am a tutor.
And everybody's mouth dropped open, because you can imagine that Taylor, because when we think of homelessness, we think of adults, we think of people that are dirty and look like they're on drugs, or mental health issues and shaking a can or begging, and that this is kids are invisible. These are invisible students in our classroom that are impacted by homelessness that nobody really knows about, and we have to be the voice for those students. It's so important that we are the voice. There's 50,000 homeless children in Massachusetts. 50,000 homeless children impacted by homelessness in our small state. The state numbers that you see are much lower because they don't account for the kids that are doubled up with other families. That's a huge population. But any child that does not have a permanent, safe place to stay each night is considered homeless. And so we have 50,000 in our state. 12,000 of those students are in high school, like you guys are. And I know that you can't imagine having to share a room with your parents, right?
Yeah.
Moving into a shelter, you get to take 2 bags That's all you get to take from your home. So what are you going to put in your bag, right? You can't take your pets. You're going to be living in the same room with your mom, your dad. Most of our families, it's single moms in the shelters. And then you also have to share a bathroom down the hallway, and you're living with 14 other families that are strangers to you in a big house, you know. And then you have one community room that you guys, who's going to decide what you're watching on TV that night, right? You also have to prepare your meals in a community kitchen, and you share a refrigerator with 2 other families. So you've got a shelf to put all of your groceries on and hope that nobody eats those. And then you're going to lock up your other groceries inside of a cabinet. And this is what Taylor and Brittany and her father Chris experienced. And so we have no idea what it's like for these students. And one night when I was finishing up tutoring and locking up the room, we provide computers and learning cabinets with resources in it for the kids, and tables and chairs and lighting. We set up a learning center in the shelters for the students, which Taylor was saying was really important. And you were saying before about it, it's like a safe haven. It's a safe school haven, and it's like you can forget about the shelter when you go into that room.
And just focus on school. It helps a lot because it's like more quiet in there, and people like actually respect that area is for the kids learning, so they don't really bring any chaos near there. So it's just like for that little hour, just means so much. Definitely does.
Makes a huge difference, I bet.
Yeah, does it provide like a distraction for you so you can really just focus?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, meant a lot.
And you have the same caring adult that shows up every week and says, "Hey Taylor, how you doing on that school project you were working on?" Or "How did that paper turn out?" So somebody who's really paying attention to just that one student. So you have that same familiar face that shows, you know, up every week just for you.
And it even like means more when like that week before that they helped you study for a test for the next day, and then the week later you can't wait to tell them, "Oh, I got an A on that test because you helped me." And it's just like greater if you worked on a project. They'll ask you and be like, "Oh, so how'd you do on that project?" Because they remembered, and it's like, "Oh, that meant a lot." So you get to share your school experiences with them, and they remember and they talk about it with you. So it's like a different connection. It's good.
So great. Amazing. How did you go about developing the plan for Schools on Wheels?
So when I read the article in Family Circle magazine, I contacted Agnes Stevens, who's the founder out in California, and I just called her. I mean, I just looked up the number for School on Wheels, called her and said, "I would like to bring the program to Massachusetts. What do you think?" And she's a big Red Sox fan. She was born in Massachusetts. She was a nun for many years and worked in inner city schools in New York and Chicago, and then had relatives in California, so ended up out in California. And when she had been retired, started it there. So when I told her I was interested in bringing it here, she asked me what kinds of programs were already available in our community for kids impacted by homelessness. So she gave me homework. And she says, "This is what you need to do." And so I would do it, and then I'd email her back and said, "Okay, what's next?" And then she'd say, "Okay, go do this." And so she said that every article that's published, she's been in People's Magazine and all different kinds of things and received many awards. Also received the prestigious Angel Network Award from Oprah Winfrey, one of my favorites. So, but Agnes said that most people, she receives about 500 hits for every news article that she's in, and that most people go away after a couple homework assignments because they realize that this is a huge commitment. And so I talked with my family. I talked with my husband, my daughter. I have one daughter, and she was a freshman. And I talked to my husband, and I said, "I really want to bring School on Wheels to Massachusetts, but it's going to take a family commitment." And I talked to people in my church. I talked to my friends and relatives, and basically the funding that came for School on Wheels the first year was really family and friends. And my husband and daughter made a lot of sacrifices to allow me to really start this program up. But Agnes then flew to Massachusetts in March of 2004, and we started the program. Then we had to work with on our licensing agreement, and also we became a 501c3 nonprofit. Of course, I didn't have funding to do that, so we were able to find Nixon and Peabody provided pro bono legal services for us, and we met when Agnes flew to Massachusetts. She was coming to get an award from the Gleitzman Foundation at Harvard University. They were recognizing 10 top educators in the country, and Agnes was here. So when Agnes came, she stayed. I asked her to stay with me. I live in Easton, and she said no, she wanted to stay in Brockton. She wanted to stay in the community where we would be serving, and she actually ended up staying at the Holiday Inn where there were homeless families living. Our state shelters were filled to capacity, so back in 2004, there were about 200 families in our state living in hotels because their shelters were filled. Now, in 2011, we have over 1,500 families in our state living in motels. The crisis has grown since I've started School on Wheels. I've also seen the face of homelessness change. Families, intact families, families that have never experienced homelessness before are impacted by homelessness and living in shelters. But it's just, when I started it, I really, again, thought I would do one shelter, two shelters, and really just recruit the volunteers from my church. And my husband's Jewish, and we belong to a temple, so I went to my daughter's school. And what happened is that people really wanted to support this, is that people got excited because it was helping kids in their backyard, and it was something that they could do to make a difference, because homelessness affects everybody. And this was something that was real and tangible. It was something that people could help put together a backpack and deliver it to a shelter for a student in need, and then they could do the tutoring, and then they started to see that the tutoring was making a difference. So people are really excited about the work, and people really want to be a part of it. People care about children's education and their future.
The littlest thing that they do means so much also. Like, even if you can't for some reason tutor because you work late or something, you could come in during an afternoon and put backpacks together or ask if they need help with anything. And that's just, that little bit takes so much off of the organization and gives it back. It's really, like, just that little bit goes so far.
Taylor's leaving now.
Thank you so much, Taylor. I really
Nice
enjoyed
meeting
hearing
you.
your story.
I'll bring that in the home. I'm going to put it on your desk.
Yes. Yeah, if you bring it back here just so I know that it's signed correctly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you. Nice meeting you guys. Good luck on your project.
Thank you.
So we're going to get a copy, right?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking this is my oral history.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
And the highlight video too.
Yeah, great.
And I know you're saying earlier, but for the camera, could you explain how you started off in your home and then moved into something?
Sure, yeah. So when I started School on Wheels in 2004, I started it out of my home in Easton, Massachusetts. And I started it basically by recruiting family, friends, people from my church, temple, my daughter's school to be volunteers. And I ran the trainings around my kitchen table. If the trainings were larger, I'd run them at Stonehill College or at our church, Covenant Congregational Church in Easton. But I wanted to, first of all, I didn't have any funding to start the program up. And part of our licensing agreement with California is not taking state or federal aid. So again, my first database was my Christmas card list, people that I went to college with, and family and friends. And so we were able to really just get the community to support the program. And I started it and ran it out of my home for 4.5 years. And then as we continued to grow and our board of directors grew, the board really felt it was important to be out in the community where we serve so that we could have more visibility, which would attract new donors and also would attract more volunteers to be a part of the organization.
So you've had a lot of community support from it?
Absolutely. Easton has been terrific. And I had just moved to Easton that year that I started School on Wheels. So it was a new community for me, but it was a wonderful way to get to know people and to also engage them in this community work.
That's great. There are two other schools on wheel programs, one in California and Indiana. How does Massachusetts compared to them?